Shalom, shalom. Daniel John Lee with Torah Restoration Ministries. It is now getting on toward Tuesday evening, July the 7th, getting into the 22nd day now of the 4th Hebrew month. And have yet another timeline. And this was at the request of somebody who watched one of my previous timeline YouTube videos, wanted me to make a timeline of the 40 Jubilee Gap from 17 AD until 2017 AD. And this was really fascinating. It took a lot of work. I've been working on this for about the last 2-3 hours here. But fascinating because literally every Jubilee for the last 2,000 years, some major event happens, and these events are quite amazing, as you'll see. So, of course, we have the this Jubilee in 17 AD where Yahshua dies and rises again, where that huge earthquake's recorded in Asia Minor by Pliny in the Middle East. So that's that one. And then we start off with the 40 Jubilee count starting in 67 AD. That, of course, is where Apostle Paul is killed and General Titus of Rome begins the 3.5-year siege of Jerusalem. Next Jubilee, the third Jubilee here is, or the second Jubilee here in our 40 Jubilee countdown, is 117 AD. Rome reaches its maximum territorial extent. So it's the largest Rome ever becomes, the Roman Empire. And Trajan subdues a Jewish revolt. 167 AD is the Pax Romana, Roman peace comes to an end. That had been going on since the days of Augustine in the BC era. 217 AD, Colosseum is hit by lightning. I thought that was pretty cool. 267 AD, first Gothic invasion of Rome. 317 AD, Constantine. Now this guy is the one who really destroys the Hebraic Messianic understanding of scriptures and switches the Sabbath to Sunday and does all sorts of evil things. He becomes the senior emperor of Rome. 367, the very first New Testament is compiled into one book by Athanasius. Until this time, the New Testament was just in scrolls, separate scrolls. 417, the Pope excommunicates Pelagius and condemns Pelagianism. Pelagius, of course, was a man who believed in free will, that man could choose whether to live righteous or to sin. And the Pope was more of an Augustinian who didn't believe that, believes that we're kind of just selected by Yah to be righteous or wicked, and he excommunicated Pelagius. I agree with Pelagius. 467, hostilities end between the Eastern and Western Roman Empire, because it had split by that time. 517, Buddhism is introduced in China, and Aryabhata compiles manuals of mathematics and astronomy. 567, Second Council of Tours, in which any cleric who has sex with his wife will be excommunicated. So the Roman Catholic Church now is starting to gain dominance here for the next 1,000 years. In 617, the Meccans start a boycott of the Banu Hashim clan, to which Muhammad belongs. Civil war breaks out in Medina. 667, the Arab-Byzantine War, where Arabs launch a series of attacks against Byzantine. These next few jubilees are going to concern the Byzantine Empire. Byzantine Empire was important in history because it preserved the Greek New Testament, whereas the other New Testaments were very perverted. So it was preserved here until it was put into the Tyndale and King James Bibles. 717 AD, Muslims siege Constantinople. Earthquake strikes northern Syria. The Muslims do siege Constantinople, but they fail in their siege. 767, Byzantine invades Bulgaria and accepts a peace agreement with them. 817, the Bulgarian siege of Constantinople ends. So Bulgaria also tries to siege Constantinople, but they are unable to defeat it. 867 AD, Basil I becomes sole ruler of Byzantine Empire. 917 AD, a large-scale attack by Byzantine against Bulgaria is defeated. So now the Byzantine Empire is beginning to decline. 967, Pope John the 12th crowns Otto II as co-emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. So you can see now the Roman Catholic Church is so powerful that they literally now crown the kings. 1017, Melas, Abari, and Norman troops are victorious in 3 battles against the Byzantine Emperor, so continues to show the decline of the Byzantine Empire. 1067, construction begins on the Tower of London. I thought that was interesting. 1117, Iceland abolishes slavery. They're one of the first countries of the West that abolishes slavery, which is fitting for a Jubilee year. And that's also 1,000 years before the Great Tribulation begins. So that's interesting. 1167 AD, first samurai becomes chief minister of Japanese government. 1217, the First Barons' War, in which England pushes back and defeats invading French forces. 1267, there's a foreshadow of Hitler in the end times. Vienna forces Jews to wear a cone-shaped headdress. They had already started forcing them to wear yellow badges, by the way. So Hitler was not original in that idea. 1317 AD, the Great 2-Year Famine comes to an end, but then the Black Death forms in southern China, starts spreading rapidly. 1367, Charles V creates the first royal library in France. 1417, the use of street lighting is first recorded in London, where lanterns with light are hung out on winter evenings. I thought that was neat. 1467, the Pope arrests and tortures papal abbreviators. These were people who helped the Pope do records and stuff. The Pope starts torturing them, so we're starting to see the collapse of the Roman Catholic power now. 1517, Martin Luther publishes his 95 Theses. Great Reformation. So that pretty much starts to bring down the Roman Catholic Church's influence on the West. 1567, the first New Testament Bible translation in Welsh. 1617, Ferdinand II begins a forceful Catholic counter-reformation, kind of the last dying breath of the Roman Catholic Church trying to get back its dominance. Okay, now these next 8 Jubilees are lots of stuff happened. 1667, Isaac Newton writes his works. There's an earthquake in Caucasia that kills 80,000 people. The dreadful hurricane of 1667 brings 12 days of rain to Virginia. John Milton's Paradise Lost, which is about the fall of Satan, is published. An earthquake in the Republic of Ragusa kills 1/5 of the population. So a very biblical jubilee there. 1717 AD, an 8.1 earthquake in New Zealand. Christmas flood hits the Netherlands and Denmark, killing thousands. 7.4 earthquakes destroy Guatemala. Bishop of Bangor defies Church of England by declaring there is no biblical justification for church and government. And what would become the Northeast USA is paralyzed by a series of blizzards. So lots of earthquakes and things happening here. 1767, just a few years before the American Revolution, first annual volume of the Nautical Almanac published, and Daniel Boone goes through the Cumberland Gap and reaches Kentucky, defying the Royal Proclamation of 1763 issued by Great Britain. So here we see the first kind of real defiance of Great Britain, where American Revolution's getting warmed up there. 1817, the Mississippi Territory splits down the middle. And they literally split that territory down the middle, Congress does, and creates Mississippi and Alabama. It's 2 different states. So I thought that was maybe a foreshadow of how maybe the Mississippi River and that area in the central United States will get split by the earthquake. And this is kind of a foreshadow of that. And the first bicycle is invented, so showing about how knowledge is increasing, like Daniel talks about. 1867, an artesian water spring begins to gush continuously in Michigan. But that was really cool. USA breaks relations with the Vatican, and blacks are given the right to vote in Washington, D.C. That's definitely a Jubilee type of thing. 1917, this is one of the most significant Jubilees, the 38th year. Britain makes the Balfour Declaration proclaiming support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Britain effectively defeats the Ottoman rule over Palestine and Jerusalem, placing it in the hands of the West for the first time in thousands of years. The USA also enters World War I. 1967, the Jews take back Jerusalem for the first time in 2,000 years. That's when the 6-Day War occurs. And then, of course, the final Jubilee here, 2017, which is when I believe the Great Tribulation begins. So again, I will publish this timeline on my website, provide a link for that below the video when I get that up. And you can study this timeline of the 40 Jubilee Gap from 1780 to 2017 AD at your own leisure. Thank you. Shalom.